Hello and welcome to Mahatma Gandhi Letters. Dearest friend, since I am referring Gandhi's letters for this series, some events may not be in the letters. But while traveling along with Gandhi's life, one cannot forget some important events. One such incident is the BalaSundaram case. It happened in around July 1895, almost after a year of establishment of Natal Indian Congress. The activities of the Congress were at their peak those days. Gandhi, in his autobiography, Story of My Experiments with Truth, remembers this incident as follows. BalaSundaram. The heart's earnest and pure desire is always fulfilled. In my own experience, I have often seen this rule verified. Service of the poor has been my heart's desire, and it has always thrown me amongst the poor and enabled me to identify myself with them. Although the members of the Natal Indian Congress included the colonial-born Indians and the clerical class, the unskilled wage earners, the indentured laborers were still outside its pale. The Congress was not yet theirs. They could not afford to belong to it by paying the subscription and becoming its members. The Congress could win their attachment only by serving them. An opportunity offered itself when neither the Congress nor I was really ready for it. I had put in scarcely 3 or 4 months' practice, and the Congress also was still in its infancy, when a Tamil man in tattered clothes, headgear in hand, 2 front teeth broken and his mouth bleeding, stood before me, trembling and weeping. He had been heavily belabored by his master. I learnt all about him from my clerk, who was a Tamilian. BalaSundaram, as that was the visitor's name, was serving his indenture under a well-known European resident of Durban. The master, getting angry with him, had lost self-control and had beaten BalaSundaram severely, breaking 2 of his teeth. I sent him to a doctor. In those days, only white doctors were available. I wanted a certificate from the doctor about the nature of the injury BalaSundaram had sustained. I secured the certificate and straightway took the injured man to the magistrate, to whom I submitted his affidavit. The magistrate was indignant when he read it and issued a summons against the employer. It was far from my desire to get the employer punished. I simply wanted BalaSundaram to be released from him. I read the law about indentured labor. If an ordinary servant left service without giving notice, he was liable to be sued by his master in a civil court. With the indentured laborers, the case was entirely different. He was liable, in similar circumstances, to be proceeded against in a criminal court and to be imprisoned on conviction. That is why Sir William Hunter called the indenture system almost as bad as slavery. Like the slave, the indentured laborers was the property of his master. There were only 2 ways of releasing BalaSundaram: either by getting the protector of indentured laborers to cancel his indenture or transfer him to someone else, or by getting BalaSundaram's employer to release him. I called on the latter and said to him, "I do not want to proceed against you and get you punished. I think you realize that you have severely beaten the man. I shall be satisfied if you will transfer the indenture to someone else." To this he readily agreed. I next saw the protector. He also agreed, on condition that I found a new employer. So I went off in search of an employer. He had to be a European, as no Indians could employ indentured labor. At that time I knew very few Europeans. I met one of them. He very kindly agreed to take on BalaSundaram. I gratefully acknowledged his kindness. The magistrate convicted BalaSundaram's employer and recorded that he had undertaken to transfer the indenture to someone else. BalaSundaram's case reached the ears of every indentured laborers, and I came to be regarded as their friend. I hailed this connection with delight. A regular stream of indentured laborers began to pour into my office, and I got the best opportunity of learning their joys and sorrows. The echoes of BalaSundaram's case were heard in far-off Madras. Laborers from different parts of the province, who went to Natal on indenture, came to know of this case through their indentured brethren. There was nothing extraordinary in the case itself, but the fact that there was someone in Natal to espouse their cause and publicly work for them gave the indentured laborers a joyful surprise and inspired them with hope. I have said that BalaSundaram entered my office, headgear in hand. There was a peculiar pathos about the circumstance, which also showed our humiliation. I have already narrated the incident when I was asked to take off my turban. A practice had been forced upon every indentured laborers and every Indian stranger to take off his headgear when visiting a European, whether the headgear were a cap, turban, or a scarf wrapped round the head. A salute even with both hands was not sufficient. BalaSundaram thought that he should follow the practice even with me. This was the first case in my experience. I felt humiliated and asked him to tie up his scarf. He did so, not without a certain hesitation, but I could perceive the pleasure on his face. It has always been a mystery to me how men can feel themselves honored by the humiliation of their fellow beings. BalaSundaram's case brought me into touch with the indentured Indians. What impelled me, however, to make a deep study of their condition was the campaign for bringing them under special heavy taxation. In the same year, the Natal government sought to impose an annual tax of £25 on the indentured Indians. The proposal astonished me. I put the matter before the Congress for discussion, and it was immediately resolved to organize the necessary opposition. At the outset, I must explain briefly the genesis of the tax. Dear friends, this is how Gandhi describes the BalaSundaram incident. In the next episode, we have a couple of interesting interviews. Thank you for listening to Mahatma Gandhi Letters.